Shalom uvracha to all of our listeners from Yerushalayim. This is Parshas Kiseitze, Erev Shabbos. Here it's Friday, and we should like to speak about a topic that is exceptionally close to my heart. And the title of this topic is Rejoice in Enlightened Fear. It's the Chazal that say, Ibdu Hashem b'yira, a person should serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with fear. And also, Gilu Birado, he should rejoice. Gilu is Lashon of rejoice in Ra'oda, which is a fear, but it doesn't mean a primordial fear that also perhaps Balei Chayim have when they encounter a menace, they see a fire, but it means an enlightened intellectual fear. Rejoice in enlightened fear. And as we start, it would be important for us to have a point of departure. So we should like to introduce a very beautiful Gemara that records a historical event in the Beis Hamikdash on Yom Kippurim, the Day of Atonement. And the Gemara, of course, is referring to a very interesting pasuk, which is supposed to be understood on two levels, metaphorical as well as literal. Im yiyu chatoechem kashoni kashelag yalbinu. If your sins will be like red, it'll be like crimson wool. So Kadosh Baruch Hu promises he will whiten them like the whiteness of snow. So of course, this is to be understood metaphorically. It comes about, of course, in Yom Kippur. That's why it's called Yom Kippur. It's a day of atonement. And the concept of atonement is something which is, on the one hand, understandable. On the other hand, it's very, very difficult to understand. It's almost enigmatic. HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Yom Kippurim offers us atonement for all of our sins. We will not have to be punished for them. That, of course, is only if the Jewish people repent. So this pasuk also became one of the great miracles in the Beis Hamikdash. In other words, it has an expression, a manifestation in the literal sense in the Beis Hamikdash, and that was on Yom Kippur. And the Gemara tells us a fascinating story. First, the Chazal enacted that this crimson wool thread should be hung up for everybody to see at the entrance of the hall, which was opposite the main gate of the Beis Hamikdash. Hilbin and on Yom Kippur this took place, obviously. It was hung high on the entrance on the day of Yom Kippur. So if after the avodah of Yom Kippurim had taken place, in other words, we're holding now late afternoon, where the tefillas have already come to a conclusion, and the sacrifices of the day have also just about come to a conclusion, the soil, la zozel, that brings about kapara, atonement, insofar as the order of sacrifice is concerned at Yom Kippur, very enigmatic type of carbon. It's the shiur, which is a chatos, it's a sin offering, is brought from the Beis Hamikdash to a high precipice by Yakira Yerushalayim, by outstanding scholars of Yerushalayim, and then it's pushed over the precipice, and when it goes halfway down, so it simply shatters, and then we have a kapara. So what happened when Klal Yisrael merited a kapara and atonement Yom Kippurim? So the Gemara tells us, Hilbin, the white, it became white, the crimson wool thread miraculously became white, which was an indication that HaKadosh Baruch Hu atoned for the sins of Klal Yisrael. So therefore, what was the response? But it's late in the afternoon. If it did not turn white, so the Gemara tells us, instead of rejoicing, they were sad and ashamed. Since the Jewish people that were in the Beis Hamikdash became sad, so the Chazal decided to partially hide the crimson red thread to avoid the Jewish people coming to melancholy and sadness. So they put it on the inside of the entrance. Nevertheless, people were able to see it. Not all of them like before, but certain people were able to see it. And if it was hilbin, if it turned white, hoyu smeichim, and it was contagious, everybody became happy and rejoiced. Lo hilbin hoyu atzevin, but if it did not turn white, the miracle did not take place. So therefore, the entire people in the Beis Hamikdash were sad and overcome by melancholy. So therefore, Chazal decided they have no choice. They cut the red crimson thread in half, put half on a stone near the precipice, and put half of the thread on the horns of the shiur Lazazel, the sacrifice which goes Lazazel. That's what the Gemara said. And of course, this is difficult to understand for one basic reason. The opposite should have been the response of the Jews who were situated in the Beis Hamikdash. On the contrary, it's very important to know where you're holding. So there was no need to be sad if the red crimson thread did not turn white. What does that indicate? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not accept the tshuva of the Jewish people, because even the Karbonos Hayom, the sacrifice of the day, need tshuva. So we still have time. In other words, for the Jewish people to know that as of yet their tshuva was not accepted is a source of happiness and a moment of rejoicing, because you still have enough time to do tshuva, and in the course of this time that you do tshuva, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu will grant you atonement. That's what the whole purpose of Yom Kippurim is. Yefash b'shu b'maisav. A person should analyze himself, examine himself, and see where correction could take place. So we do not understand why the response of the Jewish people was one of sadness. Chazal understood that they should not have been sad. The Chazal understood that melancholy is not the order of the day. And they should have rejoiced with that knowledge that they still have plenty of time to correct whatever has to be done in order for Yom Kippur to be mechaper. Nevertheless, Chazal understood that it might be difficult after such an arduous, laborious effort on the part of Klal Yisrael at this point to undertake self-introspection, a cheshbon nefesh. And the people, even though they should have been aware that they have a chance, and they have perhaps a last chance, it's quite drastic now to know that you have a few hours left in Yom Kippur in order to do tshuva, and that's the order of the day, and that is the order of the hour. Nevertheless, Chazal understood that it was difficult for them to do so. So if they would become saddened and in a state of melancholy, nothing could be achieved. So it's better to hide the thread, and the Jewish people shouldn't know where they're holding, even though that's very important, than to become melancholy. We have a pasuk that we mentioned before. Ivdu es Hashem b'yira v'gidu b'rodo. This, of course, means simply, within the context of Yom Kippur and the story we brought down from the Chazal, that Yom Kippur is a Eis Ratzon. And we all want to be a Eved La'adoinav, we want to be a servant to our master. So we should always think, especially on Yom Kippur, right? How can we become closer to the Beinu Shalaylam? How can the entire Ani, the I exist awareness, experience Kirvas Hashem Li Toiv? The nearness of Kadosh Baruch Hu is very good. David HaMelech says, Va'ani Kirvas Elokim Li Toiv. What does Va'ani mean? Va'ani means the entire being, from head to toe, physically, emotionally, mentally, experientially, the closest of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'ani Kirvas Elokim Li Toiv, for every aspect of my existence, it's good. Lo Yilbinu Hakol Atzevim. Kadosh Baruch Hu does not want atzvas. Kadosh Baruch Hu wants you to be joyous. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to be joyous even when you tremble. V'gilu birodo. Melancholy is terrible. It's a chet. But I see that Yom Kippur is not going to be mechaper. Thousands, tens of thousands of people that were situated on Har HaBayis. It comes late in the afternoon. The sun is starting to set. It's the 12th hour. Lo Yilbinu. The crimson red wool did not become white. So Klal Yisrael becomes petrified. They become terrified. Re'odo. Scared. Who knows what's going to be? What kind of Amtakas dinner will need for next year? So there's trembling. Be joyous in that trembling. Never become sad. Never become melancholy. Why should you be freilich in that re'odah? Your life is at stake. Quality of life is at stake. So there's a mashal that perhaps we could say to explain this unique experience of two opposites. It's almost an inner contradiction. Gilu bir odo. Rejoice in trembling. You have a small child, so he doesn't, as of yet, have the ability to discern what's dangerous for him and what's not. So he can't guard himself from climbing toward a staircase and perhaps injuring himself. A little baby many times sees a fire and he lunges into the fire. He'll be burned. He does not have that capability to be aware of these dangers. The Kadosh Baruch Hu helps. The child gets a little older and he develops an instinctive awareness and recognition and now knows not to be afraid. What do you mean not to be afraid? He has to be afraid. He now knows that the staircase poses a danger, fire poses a danger. So he knows now to protect himself. So that fear is a new type of fear that he overcomes because he knows that this poses a danger. A year ago, 2 years ago, he did not know it. He might fall down the steps, so he'll take precautionary measures to avoid that. But with the realization that at this juncture, this poses a type of danger, you should be afraid to engage in it. So therefore, he doesn't want to be afraid. So what does he do? He avoids it. But that's due to this deep-seated understanding that this is a danger. So we're very happy that he has that knowledge of what danger is. And perhaps he has a knowledge of what that instinctive fear is. So we're very happy. He possesses that knowledge and now he's more apprehensive. And as he gets older, he'll be aware that there's situations where he has to be careful, avoid traffic, ask somebody to cross the street for you, where a year ago, 2 years ago, he lacked this knowledge. So basically, everyone, the parents and the child, should be grateful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu opened the eyes and perception and told them what has to be avoided and what's dangerous. And it's a miracle that he knows it. Otherwise, he would always be in a state of constant danger, potential injury. So in a deeper sense, on Rosh Hashanah, the Mishnah says, the entire world passes by HaKadosh Baruch Hu Rosh Hashanah to be judged like the sheep of a pasture. What does it mean, Kol Boi Olam? Everybody. Kol Briyos of Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all the people, all the good. Today there's 8.5 billion people in the world. 8.5 billion people will be judged on Rosh Hashanah. The Goyim, they have no response. They're not aware. That's the day of judgment. A Jew becomes aware, whether he knows the Mishnah, he doesn't know the Mishnah. In the atmosphere of all Jewish communities, there is an arousal, an inspiration, and a motivation to ameliorate our spiritual life, because we know that we will stand in judgment on the day of Rosh Hashanah. All year long, we do not think about ameliorating our behavior and conduct, improving, becoming greater ethical and moral people. We start blowing shofar Rosh Chodesh Elul, Hayitoka shofar b'ir, the am lo yecharodu. Is it possible to blow shofar, right? To have a blast of a shofar, and that shouldn't produce a fear, at least the primordial fear? We're going to Yom Adin the next year, and the destiny of our lives and the whole world is at stake. We saw what happened this year in Eretz Yisrael and to the Jewish people. All of that came about, those decrees came about on Rosh Hashanah, and the Gezar Din was signed and sealed on Yom Kippur. Nothing is accidental. We could have avoided it had we been on higher levels on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So this sense that we have what to be afraid about, and that a Jew, Bemis, is aroused on Rosh Hashanah and Halavai, we should be aroused from Rosh Chodesh Elul when we start to blow shofar. Of course, the source is fear. It's Roda. This year it's much easier to comprehend that concept because we saw what happened this previous year. But you have to be joyful. Why does he have to be joyful? Whether it's the smallest person, the greatest person, everybody according to his spiritual level must be Gilu Birodo. And the higher a person reaches, the higher dargas, the stronger he comprehends both the Ra'oda and the Gilu Birodo. For in truth, a person must be worried. He has to be apprehensive. Not only about his chatoyim, his sins that he did, and he will be judged for them, but also the ma'asim tovim that he performed, which, if he undertakes the type of self-introspection, he realizes could have been performed quantitatively better and surely qualitatively better. Because after all, the source that the Mishnah brings down, there's 4 periods of time, 4 seasons that the world is judged. Rosh Hashanah, and on Rosh Hashanah, all people of the world pass in front of him, like the sheep pass in front of the pasture, Shenema, and we bring down a pasuk. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created everyone, and he judges everyone, and he's Mavin, Kol Ma'aseyim. What does the word Mavin mean? It could have been stated Yodea, Maven is Maven Dover, Mitoich Dover. But Baruch Hu knows the depth of the individual. He knows the person better than he knows himself. And he understands exactly what motivated this Maisa. And he knows the potentialities of every individual. And he knows, and we are aware of this, that he knows we could have done better in our Maisim Taivim. So we have to be simultaneously fearful and worried. Who knows if we didn't do enough? Who knows if HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not judge me severely because of my madrega, it was required of me to do better. Overcome with trembling. I'm seized with fear. These thoughts don't allow a person to sleep at nighttime. What should be his reaction due to this fear? Gilu birada. He should rejoice. Why should he rejoice? Because after all, what are we struggling for? What are we fighting for? To become sholem, to reach a type of ethical, moral, religious perfection. So now we're seized with these thoughts that we have not achieved the goal. We haven't realized it yet. So now we'll add energy. We'll learn more. We'll daven with greater kavanah, with greater hislaivus, with greater ecstasy. And we'll do mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim with more l'shem shamayim. We'll improve. And that is exactly the Hanhag of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's boidek and he understands all of man's doings and actions, including his mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim, like the Rambam states emphatically in Hilchos Tshuva. Perek Gimel Halacha Beis, the Rambam states of Meir Yisod, who arranges an individual's merits and his sins. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'shikul zeh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the weights and measures. Einu lefi minyan haschuyos v'avonos, elo lefi godlon. Yesh chushu keneged kama avonos shenem hayan nimtza b'davar tov. Yesh oven shu keneged kama schuyos. This accounting process of a person is not calculated, says the Rama, on the basis of the number of merits he has or the number of sins he has. But rather, it's not a numerical calculation, it's according to their magnitude. And one merit, just one merit, on occasion outweighs many, many sins. And on occasion, one sin outweighs many merits. And the Kesef Mishnah points out, what does it mean? One merit outweighs, overwhelms thousands of averos. The Kesef Mishnah says, it's possible that we see this individual that is a complete, wicked, evil person. What's a mitzvah? He did one mitzvah. Shebavura, because of that, Roy Shiyiske, he's right to go away with an acquittal. He has no problems. Where do we bring it from? Rambam quotes a pasuk, Yan nimtza boy davar tov, because it was found in him a good deed. Who is this referred to? Says the Kesef Mishnah. That's the great Beis Yosef or Joseph Karo. Brings the sources of the Rambam from Avio. Avio. He was the son of Yerovam ben Nevad. Yerovam ben Nevad was an evil, malicious king of Eretz Israel. He vied with Rechovam, was the Melech of Yehuda, and he was the Melech of the 10 Shvatim, without going into the historical background. So Yerovam was a greater Talmid Chacham, says the Gemara, than David HaMelech and Shlomo, but he was a very arrogant, self-centered, vain-glory person that just pursued his covet, that people should honor him. And lo and behold, he built a second Beis Hamikdash, not the real Beis Hamikdash. It's called Shtei Eglei Zov, another Cheto Egel, golden calf. And he forbade anyone to go to the Beis Hamikdash on Yom Tov. He put Aviyah in charge. His son was in charge of all the police forces, armed forces, military forces, to prevent anybody from going up to the Beis Hamikdash on the road that led to the Beis Hamikdash. Aviyah, says the Malbim, that was raised in an evil environment. And evil environments produce evil people. Had a tremendous impact on him. And nevertheless, he was able to overcome with great courage, with great heroism, his indoctrination as the son and the successor of Yerovam ben Nevad, who was Eved Avodah Zarah, and he negated all the armed forces on the road that led to the Beis Hamikdash, and he allowed people to go to B'yoyla Regel in the regular Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara tells us that Rabbi Yishmael's 2 children were nifter. Difficult to accept condolences and comfort. One of the great scholars said, look, all the Jewish scholars said great Espedim on Aviyah, the son of Yerovam ben Nevat, who just did one mitzvah. Your children that did so many mitzvahs, how great and outstanding and noble are they? We are amazed, and that's why no human being can make this calculation. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, even though to us it seems a person is an evil person, but only HaKadosh Baruch Hu understands the conditions and circumstances that he lived in, that he was raised in. Not everybody was able to live in a place of tzaddikim. Not everybody was exposed to all the privileges that certain individuals were exposed to in a ruchniyitic sense. Not everybody was able to be raised in the home of Reb Chaim Brisker or the Brisker Rav. Those privileges were not granted to everybody, and Aviyah for surely didn't have any privileges. He was raised in a mokum, says the Malm, of Oivdei Avodah Zarah, idolaters, Rishayim Gemurim. He was able to overcome. And didn't we learn when we were youngsters that Bastia, the daughter of Paroi, is one of the few people that went to heaven without dying? She went to heaven in her physical embodiment. Why? Because she was able to rebel against the Rosh of Paroi, and she saved a Jewish child instead of letting him drown. She knew he was Jewish. That's heroism. That's courage. Was able to rebel against her father's wishes like Aviyah. And that's what the Riyah Kodesh says. The Riyah Kodesh told us that the key word is boy. It has to be pnimius. It doesn't say Yan Nimtzo Dover Tov, Yan Nimtzo boy Dover Tov, in the deep recesses of his personality. Kaviyachol is the only one who is Yodea Levavois. He knows what the heart consists of. Boicha and Kloyois. He's Yodea Machshavos. He knows our thoughts. Only he can know to what extent a person labored to refine himself, negate his urges and drives, set up a new set of challenges for himself in ruchnius, in spirituality. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows how much inner strength and steadfastness he had against temptations. Only Kaviyachol can calculate and weigh on the scales to what extent were the meisim of a person in contradiction to another person, imbued with great difficulties, what an arduous effort he had to make to overcome all obstacles and impediments to do these meisim. And for somebody else, it came much easier. This calculation only Kadosh Baruch Hu can make. And the Rambam says, Lo ha-meisim bilvad, not only a person's deeds come into judgment, but also a person's inner world. A person in Rosh Hashanah, says Rambam, is tried and judged, and he'll be punished or rewarded, condemned or acquitted, not only because of his deeds are either culpable or he deserves reward, but also for not working on his inner world to refine himself, disavowing unworthy emotions, for not dismissing ignoble thoughts of hatred, of not wanting to help somebody in distress, and embracing worse of false hashkafa. And on the contrary, cultivating certain desires that are against the Torah. So therefore, the Rambam says a person has to know that he needs tshuva. He has to repent not only for his outer deeds, because he'll be judged for them for sure, but also for his inner life as well. His thoughts, his feelings, his emotions, and his sentiments. And a person was granted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu the power to regulate not only his outer life, but his inner life. He's capable from abstaining from murder, theft, perjury, and forgery, from inflicting evil things upon other people, but he's also capable of standing away from hate, also from coveting. But a person said to himself, but I desire this. I desire this person's home. It's a palatial home, has beautiful paintings. I can't control my sentiments, my feelings. I wish I had it. I desire it. This person, I don't like him. He might have said something terrible, whatever. I hate him. There's no apology. There's no extenuating circumstances. All emotions, all feelings, all thoughts, all spiritual vibrations a person is responsible for, and he should have avoided to the best of his ability. He should have worked on it for not coveting somebody's property or possessions, for hating people, or for not liking them enough, for finding joy perhaps in somebody's defeat. And he rewards man for his inner world as well. Even if he can't do good deeds, doesn't have the money, doesn't have the vehicle, he's not in a position to do it. But if in his inner world, he has a deep love of other individuals and a deep commitment to do loving kindness, so he will be rewarded for that, as if he did it. And the Chayvus HaLavavis told us the greatest formulation of all time. Even if a mother, a regular mother, will be rewarded for loving your child. Why, asked the Chayvus HaLavavis? It's quite natural. Can a mother really help herself? She can't. She must love her little child. Says the Chayvus Halavavis. But if in her inner personality, in the Pnimius HaNefesh, this mother was capable of developing an unlimited love of a child, so the midah that she has in her Pnimius, in her inner world, is such a midah that she can love any child. And she can love every child. And she can look at every child as a gift of God. And if she had the opportunity, she would expend loving kindness on all other children. That's why she'll be rewarded. And as we said a moment ago, only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can make this calculation. He sees everything, he foresees everything, and he understands us and knows us better than we know ourselves. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hand rests heavily upon us. And in conclusion, we would just like to mention a story that is, my opinion, something which we should constantly remember. Just my humble opinion. The Barditchev Rov, Sus Yogan Oleinu, Reb Levi Yisrael Barditchev. So he was a Memuna appointed by the community for Pidyon Shvuyim. In those days, we also had, Rahman al-Islam, God forbid, we also had hostages, because that was a time that the Tsar used to give over the ability to collect taxes to a Paritz. A Paritz would pay a certain amount of money to the Tsar, and the Tsar would give over legally the authority to collect taxes to this Paritz. And if a Jewish person had a business and he happened to succeed a little bit, right? So this Paritz had a monopoly on collecting taxes, so he would always extort a higher tax from the Jewish person than from a regular person. If he didn't want to pay, they would kidnap him and hold him hostage for a ransom. Levi Yisrael Barditchev was appointed the people in White Russia to first and foremost negotiate with the kidnappers. We knew who they were, and try to lower the amount of the ransom, and then gather the money, he and other tzaddikim, and to pay the ransom. One day, there was a Jewish person that was kidnapped, broad daylight, tied hands and legs to a wagon, and he was drawn in the entire town where the Jews live, and he yelled out, Hatzilu, Hatzilu, save me, please. So right away, Levi Barditchev went to the authorities, negotiated a certain amount of money to be paid for him, and started to raise the money. Made a magbit. Save me. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the process of raising money, Levi Yitzchak stopped. They asked him, what's going to be? Why are you stopping? So he said, I'll tell you. I went to a gvir, a rich person requesting money, and I received a big amount immediately. And I went to another gvir, and I also received a substantial amount. And a third gvir, an exceptional amount. So you know why I stopped? Said Barditchev? Because I knew this was not a mitzvah. For my mother told me, a mitzvah kumton shvel. If it's really a mitzvah, it's a genuine mitzvah, so it doesn't come on easily. So there must be a deceit in this specific case. So they checked it out, And it was this barrier. It became clarified that there was a conspiracy between the poets and the Jew to pretend as if he was held captive in order to extort money from the Jewish community and the tzaddikim and split it. So my mother used to tell me this story, and the lesson we derive from this story is simply that we have to fight a battle. We have to struggle to do a mitzvah b'shleimus and perfection. And the more difficult it is, the harder it is when there's forces that rise up against us. Doesn't come easily. And nevertheless, a person tries harder and harder with mesirus nefesh till he succeeds. So this mitzvah is much more precious and dear to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is the Gilui Biroda. Perhaps we do not implement the mitzvahs with enough mesirus nefesh. Perhaps we do not implement our spiritual life the way we should. And a gate has opened to us. An enlightenment has opened to us. The month of Elul. Impossible. We go out in the morning, we're afraid. We hear shiur. We're afraid. It bothers us to the extent maybe we cannot sleep, but we should be happy because another person doesn't even know enough to worry about it. Kaviyachal is maven every single thought, every single action. How much spirituality, for lack of a better word, how much hecherkeit, how much loftiness and pnimius, how much l'shem shamayim does man's actions consist of? Is it lases tzeincha elakaycha fases, to do your will ecstatically with happiness? There's our motivating factors. So we only hope and pray that Bez Hashem Yisbarach, we will improve ourselves, and our entire life should be a nachas ruach lefonov. It should be a source of pleasure for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a reach nichayach. It should be like the sweet odor of a carbon, and we should accomplish a great deal the coming year through our improvement. And we should only always be happy, always be besimcha in every situation, and everyone should have a gemar chasimah.